Welcome everybody. Welcome. This session today is actually really important to us as a firm, amongst everything else. We came across the Young Women's Trust a couple of years ago when we were looking for a charity to support through the firm E2W, through the E2W team, and for our members to get involved in. And we kind of looked at all sorts of things, from helping young women with book clubs in Africa, doing stuff in Asia, working in loads of different areas. And then somebody pointed us at the Young Women's Trust. And we looked at them and we said, this is just such a great match. It's such a great match with what we do and our beliefs and the support we want to give our membership. It's in this country and it's about young women in the UK and helping and supporting them. Then we met them and we looked and saw what they were doing. And the work they did, and actually how similar it was to the work that we do as E2W. It's about confidence building, it's about networking, it's about support, it's about help. So we got together a couple of years ago and we've been doing some really exciting things with them, and we want to do more. Today we've got three fantastic young women from the Young Women's Trust on the line. So I'll ask them to give you a wave one by one. So Lily, good morning and welcome, big wave. Ulia, hello, how are you? Lovely to see you. And Lauren, hi Lauren, thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Just to give you a little bit of an idea of the agenda for the day, Lydia is first of all going to just give you a much better description of what the Young Women's Trust do than I've just done. Katie is then going to share some of the work that E2W do for the Young Women's Trust. And then we're going to start talking about the pandemic. So Lily's going to talk about the particular challenges and effects that the pandemic has had on young women. Then Lauren and Ulia are going to also tell some of their story and how they're involved with the Young Women's Trust. So does that all make sense? If it does, my next door neighbours builders have just started banging and you can probably hear them. So I'm going to come off mute I'm going to go on mute as quickly as I can and pass Lily over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks everyone for joining. It's really nice to be here and to talk to you. And thank you, Yulia and Lauren, for joining as well. Obviously, you're here to share some of your experiences, and we are recording, so it's up to you how much you want to share. And if you do want to share, think about what you want to keep confidential. And if you do need to turn your camera off at any point, that's fine as well. So thanks everyone for joining us. Young Women's Trust we're all about economic justice for young women, and for us we define young women as age 18 to 30, so that's where our support services focus. We've obviously, as everyone has been affected by the pandemic, but we are lucky to a certain extent in that our services for young women were already remote. There's kind of three main areas to our work. So our services support young women into work, and they also support young women's well-being as well, helping them to build strong mental health as well as identify their skills and feel ready for work. So we call this our Work It Out service, and there's two kind of main parts to it. One side is professional coaching. It's a concept that you're probably quite familiar with. A lot of women who work in more kind of professional settings are quite used to the idea of careers coaching and life coaching. And when we worked with young women 8 years ago now, to talk about what kind of service they felt would be helpful in getting them into work, it was clear that that was something that they had heard of and were really interested in and felt would be really, really helpful for them, but obviously is completely financially unavailable to a huge amount of young women. So we work with professional coaches who are employed by us at Young Women's Trust to support young women with them sort of building strong mental health, setting goals, staying motivated in their job hunt. And both of the young men on the call today, Lauren and Yulia, have used those services. So I won't tread on their toes. They can tell you a bit more about that. The other side of the service is CV feedback, which a few of you, I think, get involved in volunteering, or perhaps some of you on the call do. I know that ETW have a lovely team of volunteers, and we do sort of provide really in-depth personalised feedback to young women on their CVs. And of course, we also need to do a lot of research to understand young women's experiences. Most recently, obviously, of the pandemic, but also the issues that they face in trying to kind of access work. And we root all of our campaigns on that research as well. We like to involve young women in all of the research that we do. So we train them as peer researchers so that they can go out and interview their peers and get really, really in-depth responses and honest feedback on the kind of issues that young women are facing. And Yulia has been doing some of that work, so she'll be able to tell you about that. And then the final area of our work is our participation, which really is involving young women in kind of everything that we do. So for instance, coming to things like this, but also they kind of advise us on everything from the design of our new website through to our whole strategy as an organisation, through to writing some of our supporter campaigns, and everything that we can do to involve young women in our work, we do. We have an advisory panel of young women as well, who kind of advise us on everything. So that's kind of us in a nutshell.
I could come off mute. Lily, thank you for that. Thank you. Really interesting. So, Katie, what have E2W been doing?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that we do as our network to support the trust is, and I think some of you on the call are actually volunteers for the trust. So this means that you receive a CV from a young woman. It could be a CV or job application, and it's your responsibility to go through it to really make that CV work for this young woman. So, you know, looking at spelling and grammar, looking at previous job opportunities that they've done to really make it work for them, and then working with the feedback that you get. Potentially there's a job opportunity that they wish to apply for. You can help them kind of get their CV into a good fit place to apply for that role, and some job applications as well, helping with you know, just making it really the best it could be. So that's a really nice way that we support the trust. Other ways that we work with them is there's a lot of fundraising and donating. So last 2 years ago, as a team, we did something called the Commando Race. At the time, it was absolutely horrific, but as soon as it was finished and we had kind of raised a lot of money, there's me looking very cold. It was a brilliant thing to participate in. This weekend, a couple of our teammates are actually virtually running the Royal Parks Half. Obviously, because of COVID, this can't take place as it usually would. So a couple of our team members have decided to break it up around parts, you know, where we live. Mark is actually doing his in October, and he's absolutely in the wars because he's hurt his Achilles trying to train for it. So we need some extra support there. I'll pop the Just Giving link in the box as well. But if you ever see us doing anything on LinkedIn or our social media channels about the trust, if you can just like and share and help bring this awareness, it would be so important. Yeah, so that's kind of what we're doing. We're always looking at, myself and Lily work really closely about what we can do more so. So there's things in the pipeline that we're discussing. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for that, because hopefully in the next couple of months, we'll be able to get a few more bits and pieces in place.
Katie, thank you so much, and I am to blame for putting everybody through that commando course, but it was brilliant, and certainly looking forward to trying to do my first half marathon later in the year. But we do need some more support, I think, don't we, for anybody who wants to spend half an hour a week reviewing CVs. Have a word with Katie, because it's the people that do it now within the E2W membership find it hugely rewarding.
But if you're also looking at taking on personal challenges, whether it's walking, a bike ride, one of our members is doing a virtual Land's End to John O'Groats, and she's asked us if she can do it on behalf of the trust. So if there's anything that you're doing in your own personal time, please can you bring it to us, and we can try and have you raise money in that way too.
Brilliant. Katie, thank you. Lily, Lauren and Ulia, back to you. We've all struggled in the last year, one way or another, but I'm guessing young women have had particular struggles, maybe more acute than us. Lily, do you want to give us some just sort of background on that?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, obviously we know that COVID has had a big impact on everyone's lives, but the industries that have been kind of most likely to close down are those that are predominantly employ young women. So we've got things like travel. The whole travel industry obviously employs a lot of young women, particularly in lower paid roles. Retail, hospitality, the beauty industry, all of these things have just completely closed down. And if you add on top of that the fact that young women are more likely to be on lower incomes to start with, they're less likely to have that kind of financial cushion that that they've built up. We did some research before the pandemic and found that I think it was 1 in 4 young women didn't expect to be debt free until they were 40 at least. So if you take the context, if that's what you're going into the pandemic with, it's not really a level playing field to start with. Plus then taking on loads of extra caring responsibilities. I think it's been a real challenge, but Lauren and Yulia, you'll be able to speak kind of firsthand about the things that you've been doing, and I know Yulia, you've done some research into it as well. So did you want to jump in?
Sure, thank you, and hello everyone. A lot of the research that I was involved with had to do with how young women were affected by the pandemic. So I conducted quite a few of peer research interviews where I talked to women from disadvantaged backgrounds about their current concerns and issues. They were really varied. Most of them had to do with either debt or loss of income, loss of job, and a lot of them talked about taking over more responsibilities at home. This wasn't necessarily perceived as extra care work or unpaid care work. They just thought that that's just something they have to do. There's no one else to do it. Some of the young women I talked to either decided not to go into education or decided to give up higher education and stay behind for a bit, just in case they might feel better financially afterwards. And a few of them had children, so they were talking about how hard it is either to have COVID and have to take care of a young child, or have COVID, your family having COVID, and also having to deal with maybe having to take care of your family while having the symptoms. There is quite a lot I can talk about the research we've done. If I get a bit of questions, I could probably be more specific.
Lilia, the juggling all of those challenges whilst being on a low income or no income, or being furloughed, how much of a challenge was that? What kind of stories have you heard through your research?
Sure. So first of all, I'd like to talk about my personal situation. When the pandemic started, I was employed on a pretty low income, but it was survivable. But then as soon as it started, it was very obvious to me that I was to be either furlough or out of employment really soon. So the first thing I did was to move counties, and I moved in with my mom on the expectation that it might be challenging for my mom as well. So we thought that if we pool our resources together, we might be able to afford one rent rather than two. And once I moved in here, I worked online for about a month or so, and then I was furloughed until October. And then I was unemployed. Fortunately, because of Young Women's Trust, because of all the CV feedback and the extra coaching that I got during the summer, I managed to get another job pretty soon afterwards. So I got from furlough to unemployment to employment pretty soon, but the mental health plummeted at the time because it was just a few months of really not knowing what's going to be like, and not only being concerned about COVID and about my mom, who works for the NHS, so she would go to work every day, but also being concerned about possibly not affording rent or not affording anything in the next month. But my situation ended up being okay, so I'm happy with that. Other women that I talked to weren't necessarily as successful. One particular girl, and this is a story from one of my colleagues. She was talking on how the girl that she interviewed was disabled, and somehow it was decided that she didn't need the same support from the government that she had before the pandemic. So her carer would visit her less, which for her meant that she would take less showers, or she would have less personal care because of that. And I thought that was just a horrible story to hear, but also something so important. We don't see this in the news, we don't talk about this, and we don't know that this happens, but it probably happens to a lot of people who are disabled and a lot of people who actually cannot really fend for themselves that well. A lot of the young women that I talked with were talking about domestic violence and how either themselves or their friends had issues with these and they had to leave, or sometimes they had to stay, how this affected them during the pandemic. Because if they've lost their income or their partners have lost their income and they're somehow stuck together or stuck there, they can't really leave. And then, yeah, sorry, I got a bit on a tangent, but these are definitely stories that I've heard during the peer research interviews.
And for the women that you've spoken to and kind of have got support from the trust, was it kind of recommendations from friends? Was it something they saw on social media? How can we help make young women more aware of the trust?
Right. A lot of the young women that I've spoken to on this area of how they've heard or how they've used our services said that they actually heard about Young Women's Trust on Facebook or on Instagram. So it seems that social media is the primary way that people find out about us. Some of them had it from friends. So most of the times it's a young woman who has taken either coaching or CV feedback, and then they just pass it along to their friends.
Right, that's really great.
Julia, thank you. Lauren, do you want to share your experience and your involvement with the Young Women's Trust?
Well, I came across, hi, sorry everyone, I came across Young Women's Trust by being suggested from another workshop that I did with Women and Girls Network, and I joined the Facebook group, came across the website and the charity, and signed myself up originally for the Work It Out coaching and also the CV feedback, which both were absolutely amazing. the Work It Out, I had a lovely lady called Carol, and she, I only ended up having 2 sessions with her because I didn't need any more at that point. But
Lauren, what's so just for us, so explain what Work It Out is.
Yeah, it's kind of it's like you get given 6 sessions of free coaching from a member of the trust, and they can help direct you in the way of like places to search for jobs, like different career paths that you could take. For me personally, I'm trying to get into women's work or like helping women's charities and stuff like that. And then I was being recommended different sites to look on, like charity jobs, independent, and like different government websites and stuff. But unfortunately for me in my area, there's nothing that really exists. And at that point when I was having the coaching, I ended up getting a part-time job online, so that's why I ended up stopping it, because it felt too much the pressure of like future careers and stuff. But for me, it came at a really important time in my life, stumbling across Young Women's Trust, because I'd just finished a degree. I suffer with endometriosis myself, so like I can't work full time. I don't really have the health to work full time. The pandemic has definitely affected me, because obviously there's no proper graduate jobs going at the minute. My health has been put on hold as well. So like I signed for an operation last February, so it's been over a year now of me just having to worry about career, put my life on hold, not knowing really what to do. But knowing that there's people in similar situations and like coming across a group of women that made me realise that I'm not alone was so incredibly important. And it took me out of a dark place that I thought only I was suffering from, because people don't speak about it enough, like the struggles that we go through. It's not spoken about. I know I speak to my friends and stuff about it, but I feel like in terms of intersectionality, they have a lot more privileges than I do in terms of finance and like ability and stuff like that. But yeah, 100% recommend Work It Out. And the CV feedback as well. All I had to do was send off a CV, and it took probably a few days for them to get back, and it was like a full, in-depth, thorough description of everything that I could improve, things that needed criticism, things that I could do better, things that I could include. And from then I got interviews and stuff, and that's when I ended up getting my part-time jobs. They've definitely helped massively in that way. Yeah.
Lauren, that's really lovely to hear. I don't know, is there anybody from the E2W membership on the call who's actually doing the CV feedback?
I do.
Hi, Lilia, how are you? So I guess you probably, it would be a strange coincidence if you didn't do Lauren's
I
CV.
can't, I don't know anyway. It's anonymous anyway.
But, yeah, and you wouldn't know anyway. But just tell us about actually what that CV feedback and what your involvement is.
I mean, I've been doing it for a while now, and I review one CV a week. I find this experience very interesting from my perspective. It's more a question of through a CV, you discover a whole background. You try to understand a person, a curriculum, what they are, not only what they are looking for in terms of jobs, but also the where they come from and where they are going. And I find it fascinating because you try to understand what are the skills, what are where is the drive as well, where is the energy, and where they could go. So I must say, I do spend more time. It takes a good 2 hours, 3 hours to review a CV, I would say. But it's fascinating to try to understand really who the person is and what are the skills and the strengths and where they can go. So I like this experience. It's wonderful. What I see generally is that some young women it's more a question of confidence, and you feel it reading a CV that they are hesitant in talking about some aspects of what they've done, what they've achieved, the success. So you see this lack of confidence, not completely sure about what to say, where to say it, or putting too many little bits and pieces and thinking, oh, something will stick, when in fact they have some very good strength. and they just need to dig into those strengths and to elaborate and expand their CV. Most of the general issues that I see in CVs is the experience being talking about what they have delivered, what they've done for each experience, not just saying I was in charge of this or my task was that and brushing it aside. It's more like digging into what have I done and what have I delivered. So being more confident about that. And also in some cases it's some gaps because they've cared for someone in their family who was sick, or they had a break, or they went into the wrong direction. You know, you graduate or you do something and then you change your mind. And I think it's very important to not to see them as failures, and not to hide them. On the contrary, put them as this was an opportunity to rethink and take another direction and to show the strength of the person. So I mean, I find this experience fascinating, very interesting, and I'm always thinking that, and probably I see it in a very easy and simplistic way, but in the COVID environment, I was thinking more about all the opportunities that people could have by working remotely, because I assume that there could be much more work that you can do wherever you are located. You're not dependent on the location. I also suppose that physical disabilities might also, people with physical disabilities may be at an advantage when they are in a COVID environment, because they can work remotely and it doesn't matter not to be able to move around. I don't know, there are lots of things I'm thinking positively, but maybe I'm too optimistic there.
Lilia, thank you, and I'm sure everybody as well from the Young Women's Trust would like to thank you for the contribution that you've made to doing those CVs over time. And it's lovely to hear from Lauren to see how it actually helped her. Lauren, Lily, and Ulia, in your research, just picking up on the point that Lilia made there, do you think post-pandemic into some kind of new world that we're moving into, there will be more opportunities to work from home, deliver from home, and we'll move into a better world? Or what are some of the fears that you might have there?
It's the $1 million question, isn't it? I mean, what's life going to be like afterwards? If I can jump in first, and then I'll pass over to you two. I think one of the things that we are really feel very strongly about at Young Women's Trust is the fact that, you know, the government is saying we want to build back better. That's their phrase after the pandemic, and that's something that we absolutely agree with. We can't go back to have business as usual because it wasn't really working for young women beforehand. So our kind of main campaign that we've been running for almost a year now, since the pandemic first started, is No Young Woman Left Behind. And under that, we have lots of policy asks from people in power, and we are actively matching, linking young women to MPs, giving them the opportunity to speak to them, to talk about the experiences that they've had, to make sure that actually, as we start to make big decisions, as those in power start to make big decisions about how the country is going to reopen, how they're going to support people, that young women's experiences are considered in that, so it's working for everybody. But I do think that it's not as simple as kind of working from home equals good and not working from home equals bad, because obviously it's great to have that flexibility, but there's also a lot of things that young women learn from being in a workplace. Even talking about the idea of it as in you work from home or you don't work from home is slightly kind of a privileged way of looking at it, when you think a lot of the industries that young women work in, you can't work from home. That's the sort of thing where you have to be out and about. So at that point, it becomes about, how can we help them to do that safely? And then I suppose we're also talking about one of the big things for us has been realizing that importance of kind of digital inclusion. So yes, in terms of accessibility, things being online has opened up loads of new opportunities for us to communicate with young women. It's been amazing that we can just invite people along. But similarly, I mean, we ran a training workshop last weekend with young women, and it was long. It was 3 hours long, and because it was, you know, a long-term kind of really big training workshop about how they would facilitate things, how they could learn to facilitate meetings. And one of them was kind of really engaged, doing really well, and then after an hour had to drop out because she doesn't have Wi-Fi in her flat and is using data, and her data would all be gone for the month if she stayed on the call. And it's simple. I think we think about digital inclusion as being like, have you got a laptop or not? But actually there's so much other stuff to think about. Just the fact that you're able to join something digitally doesn't necessarily make it accessible to you. So lots and lots of complicated and thorny things to think about. But I don't know if Yulia and Lauren, you have anything to add about what you're hoping from the world as it starts to open up again?
Well, a lot of the young women I talked about said something very similar, that they were hoping to work from home, but they couldn't necessarily afford it. And that was either not having a proper laptop, or thinking that electricity or Wi-Fi might have been a bit too much for the month, or stuff like that. And quite a lot of other women said that it actually looks pretty good. They felt like it's doable. So because they were at home, they might have stayed with parents or so it might have felt better to work from home if possible. I don't really know what's going to be. I don't know if it's going to be any better. Hopefully it will. But for me, and what I've been talking about so much, is how companies, or how the government is asking companies to include young women into the workplace. And by that, I mean reports on gender payment have been stopped, and all sorts of things like these. These are a lot of things that we talk about the Young Women's Trust, and I'm very passionate about them. I don't think the general public necessarily knows, or takes time to think about every single policy or things like this, but it would this change would probably help include young women into workforce after COVID much more than anything else, really.
Yeah, thank you. Lauren.
Yeah, adding on from that, from a chronically ill / disabled point of view, I think moving forward there needs to be a balance between working from home and back in the office. I don't think we should go one way or the other. And I think the pandemic has shown a lot of ableism and people's ignorance towards people who are ill, and like all this accessibility that actually existed before that they didn't really want to put in place, and has excluded men and women, but a lot of women, I think, get taken away from opportunities that they could be thriving in. And I wholeheartedly hope that they do allow more opportunities online, and that there are more companies that can be a bit more lenient, or like you have the option to work from home or the office, and then that also makes some women have the option to feel safe and like maybe avoid sexual harassment in the workplace, or like avoid that harassment in public spaces if they're uncomfortable to. But yeah, I'm hoping that maybe in the future there's an option there for people to kind of choose, rather than force one or the other upon people.
I think one of the things that is really interesting here is the type of things that you're bringing up there about options and hybrid working models and all of that type of thing is happening in all corners of commerce and all corners of society. Whether you're talking about most of our members are from investment banking or asset management. Those discussions are happening in banks. They're happening, amongst the Young Women's Trust. There's huge amounts of intersectionality here. Yvonne, you have your hand up, and thank you for putting your hand up. And thank you for joining. I'm glad you got on. You have a question by the sounds of it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Very interesting discussion. Interesting to hear the perspective of the other side as a young person. So I would just say that, from an organization, the hybrid workplace, like, Mark is talking about. Yes, I think the last year has shown that it is possible, that you don't have to have proximity bias, because many organizations, I think, suffered from proximity bias. I need someone at arm's length. Otherwise, I don't trust that they're working. I don't trust they can deliver. So I think that that's probably overcome now over this last year of the pandemic. However, at the same time, like when I think about many young people, it's whilst depending on your generation or how experienced your finances, it may be quite nice to work from home. But we're hearing a lot of young people, even in our own organization. I work for IHS Market, and we're hearing a lot of young people, they want to be, especially early on in their career, they want to be. Because there's a lot of coaching, there's a lot of things they feel they're missing, and they're missing out on culture or understanding the culture of the organization. Now, as an organization, we're also trying to see, well, we're going for a hybrid model because we accept that people are going to work hybrid. But question, just to put it out there, is the flexibility, I think, will be there. But the question is, how well will people use that flexibility so that they can then advance their careers? And certainly office-based work, like in financial services, will be easier to be a hybrid model. Whereas I think it might be in other industries, it might be more difficult.
Yvonne, thank you, and totally agree. Before we open up fully to questions, do Lily, Lauren, and Julio, have you got any sort of thoughts or questions that you want to pose to us, maybe?
Do either of you two have any questions?
Yes, I've seen on your website that you have a program where you involve men into equality work. And I was wondering if I could hear a bit more about it from you, rather than anything that was on the website. Is it successful? Do people find it a successful program?
Julio, you are of the moment, because it was only launched a couple of weeks ago. I've spent the last 20 years supporting and helping women to succeed and flourish in their financial services careers, and helping banks and investment banks and asset managers to recruit more women and to help them succeed. I was getting frustrated with the pace of change. It was too slow. And recognise that getting more men, particularly white men, and involved and passionate about this subject as well, was a blocker. So we've just launched. I'm really enthusiastic and bowled over, actually, by the response we've had for firms coming to us, firms and individuals coming to us wanting to know more. You'll see that we have a launch event in a couple of weeks' time, and you're more than welcome to come along and join that and hear more. But thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Of its moment. Amelie, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks all of you for the presentation and explaining us the amazing work that you guys are doing. I didn't actually know about the CV writing, but I'll definitely think I'll get involved because it sounds like a fantastic experience. But Lily, we spoke a few months, I want to say weeks, but I think it's months. We spoke a few months ago about helping you guys put together a financial resilience program for your for young women, and I was wondering what was the group's perspective on this. What are the top challenges as a young woman from a less privileged background, pandemic or not pandemic related? I think generally it's probably a difficult topic.
So Emily, do you mean like financially what issues young women are facing? Because so for context, we regularly chat to our advisory panel about how we can adapt our programs and new things that we can do, and one of the issues that kept coming up was financial support, financial literacy, like money management, that kind of thing. I don't know if either of you, Lauren or Yulia, have been involved in any of those conversations.
Yes, this was a big topic at our last advisory panel, and I'm really happy it's going forward, because we were really campaigning for it there. We were asking if there's, obviously a lot of us are going through coaching and through CV writing and everything, but then the question is what next, because we could learn so much more, we could do more, and this came up as pretty important for a majority of us. A lot of it was only on small topics like budgeting or how to understand taxes and things like this, and then it could extend into different types of bank accounts and things like this. We are a very, very diverse group, so it's hard to pinpoint one thing that is important. Some of us are really young, some of us are 18, some of us are closing to 30 or 31, so we're not able to be part of the group much longer. A lot of young women are living on the poverty line, and a lot of them have managed to exit it. So it depends, but I guess financial literacy beginning to end, hopefully, for just a regular life.
Yeah, so it's something that we're looking at developing and working on a pilot with young women over the next, so in May, June, we'll be doing lots of research with young women and finding out what the issues are that they'd like us to cover, and how they'd like us to, even how, what it will look like, whether it will be kind of webinars or digital resources or a bolt on to their coaching program. It could be anything. We'll design it alongside them, but as Julia says, it's such a diverse group, but I think our main priority will be making sure that whatever we design kind of works for the furthest first. So it has to be accessible, it has to be tackling those issues that affect young women who are the most financially insecure first, and then making sure that it will work for kind of everyone else, building up from that.
Emily, do you want to come back on that?
Oh, yeah, no, but I just wanted to say I'd love to help you guys out, and I think I've already spoken to you about it, Lily, and I think Jackie mentioned that you guys were launching the research program in May and June, but by all means, let's keep in touch, because I'm also working on a financial resilience program for E2W members. It's obviously a very different audience with very different needs, but I'm constantly in touch with the personal financial community, which specifically targets women and helping bringing them on board, and I'm conscious that obviously you need to tailor the message depending on your audience, but it's something that I'm passionate about, so happy to help out.
Thank you. Brilliant. Okay, I'm going to ask for any other questions or comments. Nolly, I'm going to, you've disappeared off my screen. You must have known I was picking on you. Oh, there you are. You've got your hand up as well. Nolly,
I have.
I know you've had, obviously, in addition to your work on the E2W advisory board, you do some work with the Young Women's Trust as well, quite by coincidence.
I do. I actually used the Work It Out service quite a few years ago, and my coach was just brilliant. And if it wasn't for my coach, I don't think I'd be doing a lot of stuff that I'm doing today, because she was the first person that actually told me I could use my voice as a vessel. From conversations with her, she actually said to me, I actually think you've got a very interesting story. I think you'd do very well in doing advocacy and raising awareness about different things, and you're so passionate. So yeah, the Work It Out coaching definitely does work. And another thing I was going to say about contributing to the Young Women's Trust, I make a monthly donation as well. So I don't know if they've mentioned that as well. So that's another way that people can get involved as well. So that's what I do. It's a very small donation, but at least it keeps them going. And the programs are fantastic. I did one where they were doing communication training. And one of the things that they do is they really do their programs with women in mind, because they offered free childcare. They paid for transportation for all of us, and they also provided lunch. And if those may seem like small things, but if you're living on the poverty line and you've got young children, you've got an opportunity to better yourself. Those are things that can stop you or hinder you from doing things. So the Young Women's Trust definitely do things with their the young women in mind, and they accommodate them in so many different ways. So yeah.
Lolly, thank you. Thank you.
That's lovely to hear. Thank you for sharing. I'm so pleased that you found all of the services so helpful and that you're now supporting. It's brilliant. Brilliant to hear. And yeah, that's absolutely something that we're really passionate about. I think a lot of organisations maybe say that they will reimburse expenses or things like that for travel, but for us it's really important, when we were able to have people along to kind of residentials and trainings and stuff, that all of those expenses were paid for up front, so that there were kind of as fewer barriers as possible. And it's something that we're trying to carry on into our digital work as well. So we're looking at a digital inclusion fund, which I kind of mentioned earlier, where we are, actively paying for, going to be looking at paying for young women to get access to data, to pay for, mobile phones and that sort of thing, so they can still access and work with us. Because we did notice as soon as the pandemic struck that suddenly just a few people who were regularly kind of coming to things just dropped off because they couldn't afford to. So yeah, it's always a learning curve for us as well.
Brilliant, Lily. Thank you. Can I go? I'm just conscious of the time. We've got a few minutes left. Lauren and Ulia, if let's finish on a positive note. If you could wind the clock forward 12 months, what are the things that would have changed in your lives? Where would you be? And maybe what's stopping you getting there?
For me, 12 months seems really exciting because I'll be in a new career, hopefully, and also I'll be finishing my master's degree. So I'm really excited about the next 12 months. All of this started changing for me during this pandemic, and hopefully I'll come off better and stronger out of it.
And what's the career? You say in a new career. What's the ambition career-wise?
I am hopefully going to work in the third sector, so also charity work. But I don't want to say too much so I don't jinx it. But it's very new for me, so I'm just exploring how I could transfer my current skills to hopefully charity work.
Okay, brilliant. I'm sure everybody wishes you all the very best of luck, and studying at the same time for a master's. As somebody who left school with a couple of GCSEs, a master's seems an amazing achievement. So well done, and I'm sure we wish you all the best. Lauren?
Yeah, quite similar. I'm currently applying for jobs that are a bit more stable, a bit more permanent, to try and get my foot into the door into charity work as well. I'm applying for things that I can work around my health currently, like booking administrators for like mental health charities. So fingers crossed that I hear back from some of them. And as well, with things starting to open up, hopefully I get an operation and my health gets a bit better to be able to work full time and provide for myself, because it's been a bit of a nightmare having to rely on my partner when I don't really want to be doing that, and I want to be getting my own money and get my own income and having that freedom really to do what I want.
You are two amazing women, and we wish you all the very best. And if you ever need any help and support, please reach out to us, and we will do what we can for you.
Thank you so much.
Lily, as far as the Young Women's Trust is concerned, what's your hope for the next 12 months?
I think we see the pandemic as being a kind of a once in a lifetime opportunity to really rethink how society operates. So it's just something that we can't let go by. So for us, it's about taking every advantage to make sure that the people who are making big decisions, whether that's business leaders, politicians, are really committed to using this opportunity to make the world a more equitable, a fairer place for everyone. For young women, obviously, is what we're passionate about, but this is a big opportunity for anyone who wasn't succeeding in society before and had so many barriers up against them, to say, like, this is my opportunity for the world to work for me. So I think the first thing for us is we're working really closely with lots of young women to get them involved in our campaigns and make sure that they're in front of the people who can make those decisions. So we had a group met Matt Hancock last week to talk about their experiences of mental health and their experiences of the pandemic. We had a young woman appear on Newsnight. So I think keeping up the pressure and keeping up the kind of profile of these issues is going to be really important. If you want to hear more about the campaign, it's called our No Young Woman Left Behind campaign. It's on the sort of front page of our website. So in fact, I can probably drop it in the chat in a second. But that would be the best way to kind of hear about what we're up to. We've got a petition on there at the moment, various different kind of policy asks. And I think we need all the support that we can get from everyone, whether that's sort of talking about the issues amongst your networks, signing petitions, making a donation, whatever you can do to kind of make sure that we're taking advantage of this opportunity, really.
Lily, thank you, and and the team at the Young Women's Trust. You're doing an amazing job, and we just wish we could support you more and help more than we do. We wish you all the very best. Thank you for today, and thank you for coming along.
Thank you, and thank you so much for all of your support as well. It's brilliant to have this sort of network of passionate women, that you're harnessing to get involved in our work is absolutely brilliant. So thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Lily, and thank you everybody for coming along and contributing and supporting. There's some links up there on the chat, which certainly I'll give you a little bit of time so you can copy them. Katie, I've completely forgotten what we've got on next week.
Next week we've got one of our members is talking about SAS pensions, so very interesting. We've got the E2 Wealthier. Christelle will be there hosting alongside Mark. So yes, join us about that one. Brilliant.
Then I'm going to let you all go. We're nearly up with our hour. Thank you very much, and do support and give to the Young Women's Trust as much as you can, particularly this year. Lydia, Lauren, Julia, everyone, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.